pure. Scary. No tropical holidays. Oh, starting to build up. Beep. All right, Dark Angels. So, classic, Series D, dry brushing. We're using an extra large and a medium. If you don't have an airbrush, this tutorial is going to be absolutely perfect for you. 4 or 5 paints only, and you're going to get a really good end result. So that's it really. One thing, I think I possibly pushed it too much towards kind of lime green, which is a bit more salamandery. Salamanders would be brighter than this, but this is heading in that direction. We're going to run a competition in this one, an interesting one, a different one. Comment the timestamp that you think I go from Dark Angels to Salamanders in this video. Whichever one gets the most likes, so the general public think is the most correct, we'll send you a set and a texture palette of your choosing. 2 competitions, why not? Whichever person suggests the vehicle tutorial, Imperial Fists, do you want to see Death Company, do you want to see Sisters, do you want to see something purple, Horus Heresy, I don't know, bright orange, I don't know the chapters. Whichever is the most liked chapter request, we will do as the next chapter video. Not the next video, but the next chapter video. That's it really. Please like, please comment, please subscribe. A load of you aren't subscribed. Please subscribe if you like the content. There's going to be some more. It's going to be good. And yeah, that's it. Let's jump in. Okay, so here we are. Got my 4 colors here. This is what I intend to use. I don't know if SKARSNIK will come into it. These should be the fundamentals. Now I'm going to try mixing in a little medium with my CALIBAN green. I don't want it to be matte. Not all the base paints are ultra matte. Not that any of them are ultra matte. Not all of the base paints are significantly more matte than their layer paints. And Macragge gave us some issues with the ultramarine. So I'm going to do some quick tests on my palette. You can see the result of me doing those. I'll pop it in a time lapse. I'll talk about those and then we're going to jump to the actual tutorial itself. I'd rather screw up here than here because I've already had to strip this once. So let's not repeat that. Okay, so quick experimentation done. It doesn't look like CALIBAN is as matte as Macragge, so that's really nice to see. I did mix it with a little bit of XEREUS purple, which ironically kind of made it a little bit grey and desaturated. I'm fine with that in the base because it getting vibrant is quite cool actually. So because this is a layer and I'm going to be working with layers, I'm going to mix a little bit of that in with the first stage, and then hopefully that will kind of make sure that our fundamental base coat isn't that little bit too matte, because that will just make our lives a little bit harder. The reason it makes it harder is because your paint gets absorbed more easily, and we don't want that. We're working over Chaos Black, which is a satiny finish. We'd like to kind of keep that going all the way through, like most of the Games Workshop paints are, and these definitely are quite satiny. So yeah, I think we've got it worked out. The only issue is when I'm using a pure layer of this, I may mix in a tiny bit of LAHMIAN medium, but again, you're introducing something kind of slightly unpredictable doing so. So we'll work from the base and then we'll just yellow it from there. Fingers crossed, I guess. On the subject of which, let's get our base on the go. Dampening pad out. As normal for base coats, rather than 1 drop of water, we're going to go for a little bit more, between 1 and 2. Work them in super thoroughly, but you don't want it saturated. You never want it saturated, so really do work it in. See, that's wetter than normal. Just going to go to the back, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a big line of CALIBAN green, because I don't want to be spooging it out of the middle. If you do take it from Citadel pots, I tried to attempt to take it from the edge of the lid. You never want to cake your brushes, it's not good. I'm doing fancy dry brushing here. Not dry brushing that gives it a bad name. People are going to tell me off for contaminating. It really doesn't matter. Percentage-wise, I got better things to worry about, like not screwing up the entire model and having to strip it again. Fingers crossed on that account. Okay, so our bristles are nice and a little bit moist. That'll help the paint leave really readily. Let's rock on. Drag them into each other. Get the brush from all areas, and then we're just going to smush this all over. That's not green enough. That is green enough. This is a great way to base coat for anyone who doesn't have an airbrush. Super fast, you get the same thickness of base coat all over. In areas that are particularly 3D, you'll see me stippling a bit more. That's because I don't want to have it running in the recesses. which is the issue that you get with traditional layer base coating. If you do something like that, you're going to get these big cakey buildups. We're trying our best to avoid those. The first step is basically just about getting an even coat everywhere as much as possible. You don't have to be obsessive, although this is absolutely fine. Super quick. Going to repeat that once more, and then we're ready to rock on and start painting. You can literally see that the patterns of it drying there. That should show you, it's quite dilute. Finish with our stippling, and then it should pretty much just blow dry before our eyes. There we go, that's a really beautiful quality base coat. So we're ready to rock on. Okay, so in the interests of keeping things fast, I'm still sticking with the extra large. You could drop down to a large or a medium here though, if you wanted to be a little bit more careful. Dilution is our friend. Gonna carry on using that dampening pad. It's dried out a little bit. It's quite warm here in the UK for a change at the moment. And so given that we started with a base coating amount, it's probably got more towards an appropriate layering amount. And what we're going to do here is we're just base coating, and we're concentrating, as you can see here from the reflection, on the bits that aren't next to panel lines. So you can smush in the middle if you like, absolutely fine. The important thing is to kind of fade towards the edges here. So anywhere where I've got access issues, I'll just drop down to a smaller brush. Obviously, I can't highlight here, missing this and this with the size of brush that I've got. So what I'm going to do is just drop down to a smaller brush there. For the rest of it though, I'm always going to use the biggest brush that I can get away with. Okay, so job done. This doesn't look hugely different from how it did, that's fine. Every one of these steps is laying a foundation for the next step, and for any of you that are familiar with the heavy metal style, they lay plenty of fat highlights before they do their thin highlights, and that's to help you have a transitional step. So think of all of these as a step that will lead on to the next one. Kind of nice under the light there. So we're actually going to be trying to simulate that. If I looked better where it was. So with it being slightly lighter on top, as we did with the ultramarines, we're going to try and end up with something that is brighter on the top than it is on the bottom. With this one, we had a little bit of an issue with kind of a difference in terms of the finishing textures between the base and the highlights. So we're going to go a little bit slower on this one and try and do some techie stuff to avoid that. So second step, dampening pad activated. Actually, rather than working that with my finger and work it on my brush is wetter than normal. And I take this as an opportunity just to take off a little bit of excess. My new extra large texture palette is really starting to build up some history on it now. It's like a washboard. I really like it for cleaning. Right, let's go. Stage 2, we've got some of the warp stain glow down. Check out it's not too wet, that's about perfect. Now, obviously, if you're doing this for an army and you want something super replicable, you can mix specific ratios and have them noted down. People often ask about that. I'm doing this quick like this. If you want to have a play and be like, okay, that's a 2:1 or that's a 3:1, then you can always have that noted. Or if you're painting an entire army, I'm a real fan of just pouring one thing into another and having your ready to go army bottle of green. You can buy plenty of bare bottles, and it really speeds things up. This is quite a lot brighter than our previous step. You can see how it's behaving on the palette there. What we're going to do is we're going to proceed with caution and probably a little bit too much dilution. That's fine though, because you'd rather make a transparent mistake than an opaque one. Always aiming for the middle of the panels first, because they're going to end up the brightest anyway. So I'm just going to lay this down all over and hopefully it looks the business. I find it really helpful to have like a solid base when I'm dry brushing. Hold it close to the camera for painting, but when I'm doing it for myself, it's pretty much always braced really securely. That's looking fine actually. Keep rotating it all the way through. You've got a round brush, you can use it from every angle. And then because you've got your mix on your palette, it's a dry palette, it's simply a matter of matching that there. So you've got a really brilliant and perfect visual reference. If something's a bit too wet, you can always just lessen the pressure as you go until you've worked a lot of it off the brush, or you can work it off on the texture palette. Either way is fine, you don't need to panic and clean your brush and start again, ever really. I'm going to try and give these a little bit of a fade where they're definitely a lighter green towards the top. So I'm pretty much going to paint them traditionally with smushing here, build up some solid blocks, and then fade it out. If this fade isn't perfect, it literally doesn't matter. That's not what we're about here. You won't notice it by the end. Now, of course, going back to the dampening pad rather than going back for more paint means that we're not killing our brushes, which is wonderful, and it's thinning our paint, so we're going to get softer transitions once we go onto the dampening pad. So we start in the bold spots, and then I use the water diluted second step to fade into the, the areas where you're worried about making a mistake. They're really easy and forgiving when you've got a more dilute paint. Right, just like the last step, pretty much. Slightly shrunk the areas. I'm going to jump to the smaller brush now for some details. We're good to go for the next step, which is probably going to be, maybe it won't be a pure warp stone glow. We'll give it a test and we'll see. Okay, so with that done, we've just used this to kind of fill in the gaps, so to speak, the ones I can't reach with the big brush. I'm actually going to begin to start using some traditional dry brushing now. Work off a little bit of excess. Still using the same color. Again, even if it doesn't look like it's doing loads, it's about laying a foundation. And this is going to be important before we jump to the next step, which, as I said, I'm kind of a little bit scared about because MOOT green is a lot lighter. Work off the excess. And then areas here that we've pretty much not hit, we're now going to dry brush and we're going to be hitting the edges. So rather than stippling or smushing, much more traditional back and forth dry brushing. And even if this doesn't look like it's doing a huge amount, it is. So laying a foundation is very important. And we're going to get everything from every angle, particularly from the top, but make sure that you hit things from every angle. And of course, if you want something to be picked up, let's take this line here. You've got to go side to side, you can't go down it. But it is absolutely possible to highlight lines like that. So we're going to do that all over. Don't forget the steps, little details like the feet here for the door, all that type of stuff. Hit all of these edges. It is very important. Just to note, silly of me, you can absolutely use a big brush for it. It's about edges. There's no way to go wrong. So you can use it, you don't have to use a delicate brush unless you can't get into somewhere, which shouldn't be a struggle. So rather than saying that and not doing it, I was just doing that because I had that one in my hand, which is of course turning very Hulk colored. Big brush. This will be way faster. Don't know what I was thinking. It's like incorrect laziness. Laziness that's making my life more difficult. Soft touch at first. Oh man, what was I thinking? What an idiot. Do the entire model in about 2 seconds with this. See all these edges just about being caught here. Good thing I'm not teaching people on YouTube, isn't it? Even with the big brush, you can still hit details like this. We kind of want a general pre-highlight before we do something more specific. If you're looking to hit an edge like that, you can still hit it with a big brush. Teach you something magic. This is a rolling highlight. Put in the brush at 180 degrees and you take it to 90 and you intend to hit that edge, magically you will. This blows people's mind in person at demos. You don't need a small brush. There we go, perfect. We're really starting to see that kind of effect now where it's a bit darker at the bottom. Let's rock on to the exciting step. So, dampening pad is still about right. Higher proportion of this. Note, I've not cleaned my brush. I want some of the previous step in there. I want this to be gentle, and I definitely want it to be dilute. See how it's looking. Test it in the same place we've tested everything else. I think that's okay. I'm going to be ballsy. I think we're all right with that. Don't worry about that slightly mottly pattern. It's okay. I don't know if I'm saying that for you guys or me. Nah, it's absolutely fine. It'll be good. So back to the dampening pad. As we said before, if now it's softer, you've mixed it in with the brush more with the previous step, If you did anything that's a bit unsubtle and you're looking to fade it out towards the edges, you've got a lot less paint on the brush and it's more dilute, so you can use a lot more pressure. Also at the same time, we can start hitting these edges when we're happy with how things are looking. It's really warm in the UK, so you're going to see me using a drop of water to reawaken the dampening pad a lot more often than I would do normally. Test it here, get a literal perfect test. Ooh dear, far too wet. It happens. This is why we start at the top. See, pinching the brush, that's a way to get a wedge out of it, if that helps you get anywhere that you need to. Really useful technique. For this step that you should start to see kind of glowing looking, fairly high quality highlights appearing all over your model. I'm going to try and do them more towards the top than the bottom to get that nice fading effect going on, and towards the bottom we'll be using more of the dry brushing, to the top we'll be using more of the stippling. Okay, so we are actually starting to look pretty fancy. Something I wanted to highlight here is something that it's good to try and avoid. All of the tank, I'd say, apart from the door, is looking pretty good, pretty natural. I wonder if any of you can spot what's wrong with the door. So I'll give you 10 seconds. Put in the comments what you think is wrong with the door. Pause the video now. So what's wrong here is that it looks too obviously man-made, as in I have picked where to highlight these and I've done it in 2 stripes. So what I need to do here, I think, to fix this is to kind of sneak it around a little here and here. And the other thing is that this, because I'm just like, go down there, I haven't carried on the same degree of fade that I've got elsewhere. So this stuff's brighter on top, darker there, and this is just, ugh. So there's 2 things I could do. Maybe I'll do both. I could take a little bit of dark color and stipple the bottom of this. I think that would achieve a lot. I'm gonna try that first. And the other one is I could actually kind of sneak things round to make sure this middle section, which should be bright, because it's close to the top of the vehicle, is bright and stuff like that. I'm gonna do the darkening first. It's always fine to hop around with stippling. It's extremely forgiving for it, and you should definitely make the most of it. So I'm gonna get a little bit of our CALIBAN, which we've largely left behind now. Baby brush, well, medium, not that baby at all really. Take the opportunity to clean our brush a little, why not? Any opportunity for free brush cleaning, you should be taking yourself up on. We might even have to go and get a little bit of our purple. I'm fine with that if we do. Yeah, let's take a little tad. Sneak a tiny bit from the edge. Beep. Fairly heavily diluted because this could go really wrong. What we're looking to do is just match it across here. Just because there's a line here, it doesn't mean that we have to be linear. So I think that has actually done a little bit for it. It's just about looking at the miniature and finding those bits where you've just accidentally humaned and you've forgotten about art. So that's already done a bit. I'm actually going to highlight here at the top again with our previous mix. Put some of that down in case I need any more. Obviously we've got some of our previous layer of paint in the brush, which is going to darken things a little. That's okay. Take some, work it in. And this is pretty wet. Get those edges. There we go. Oh no, apart from a great big splob. Where has that come from? There you go. Very technical, licky finger fixing. Fixed, apart from our mistake, which we also fixed. That's made a really big difference. So yeah, think of your vehicle as a whole. Actually notice that the front is a little bit brighter than the back. I could kind of stipple that, but I think we're going to get away with it once we've done the final highlights. So fixed, let's continue with the bright colors. So we're going to go for heavy dilution here. Be really careful. Okay, we shouldn't be smudging anywhere. We're good. Keep turning your brush because your brush will have its own shape, even though it's fairly round and fairly regular. If you rotate it, you won't end up with like the same giraffe pattern kind of echoed all over your model, which is a plus. This is beginning to look pretty tasty though. After our learning experience, I'm going to make sure to not repeat that. Get all of that door with the highlights. Pinchy technique. Whoa, starting to build up. Now, if you wanted to do salamanders, you could just take the ratios we've used and go to lighter faster and do it more heavily, more all over. Obviously there's some other colors available for that, but I think it's quite an easy way to get there. We're gonna have to be quite careful not to end up accidentally going into salamanders because I like high contrast. But yeah, you could easily get there if you wished. Made it quite wet now. I want something that's gonna leave quite easily, so I've got to be careful. So we need light pressure. And now, as the brush has pretty much worn off a lot of what it's got on it, you can go to some more dry brushing pretty safely and be a bit more careful. Try and just hit the edges and not smushing it all over so much. Some at angles, using my roll-in highlights. And then, as with every step, take a look at it. Have we missed any areas? Obviously, there's 2 or 3 areas missed here. Obviously, to me, this side of the turret just should be lighter than it is. The brush has struggled to get in there because it's big. Here and here, somehow we've got that one. Probably because I'm right-handed, I've been going like this. See if we can get this to the big brush. No worries if not, we'll just drop down. But I think we're good. Nice, that's beginning to look really tasty now. So we're onto the bright stuff. I've got MOOT here. Ooh, that's quite a lot brighter. That is a lot brighter. I'm scared. Okay, so 1 drop of water. And obviously we're going to be using a mix here because this color is just so much brighter than what we've done. I don't know if we'll end up with a pure MOOT stage at all. I mean, look at that. That's very different from anything we've got so far. Maybe this is why you would use SKARSNIK, because that's a bit too happy for Dark Angels, isn't it? There we go. We're not going on a tropical holiday. It's 40k. So we're really going to work this in and work it off, and then just do everything we've been doing, but smaller, basically. Actually, before we go there, I forgot this section. Phew. So I really want this leaving easily. So I've got more paint than I would have had on the brush in the previous step, and use less pressure and be really careful. It's quite a lot brighter. Gonna dilute a bit more. Wetter. And I'm gonna work it in as well. Now working it in is gonna push it back to the previous layers that are in the brush. So that will soften it both with dilution and with color mixing. There we go. And we're just going to be patient and gentle. Softly, softly, keep it towards the top until you're happy with how the brush is behaving. Taking an extra 50% of time here, you will really be rewarded for. The steps become more important, more obvious, and less forgiving as you go, so if anything, slow down towards the end. You're having to cover less of the model as well, so it's not going to feel too slow. That's looking good. Wow. That possibly looks better on camera than it is in real life, but I'll take it. Soften it up. I'm not going back for more paint. Important. Okay, beginning to feel that less is coming off the brush now. This area I went a bit heavier, actually looks pretty awesome, so maybe we could have gone heavier there. Now there's less on there, I'm gonna be less careful. I'm gonna get some more general fades in around the areas that we've put in already. If we go back for some more water, obviously it'll leave more easily, but each time we do this, it's more and more dilute, so you need to be less and less careful. Possibly at the stage now, dry brushing is going to be incredibly subtle, / do nothing, because we've basically been cleaning the brush the last 3 steps. Oh, we're good. Hit those edges. Oh, that's magic. Be careful now, I don't want to build up any texture too much. Fine art to knowing when to stop. For these final steps, I'm going to do a little bit more top to bottom highlighting to suggest lighting. Keep things directional. Looking pretty good. There's an obvious stop here, so let's fade that out. And those areas we know are problems. All right, final step. Pure, scary. Take a little bit of that SKARSNIK as well, just to pull it back from being too happy. No tropical holidays for our dark angels. And I'm edge highlighting this. Built up a little bit too much texture on the turret. I'm not quite sure why they've got it specifically. Maybe I've just enjoyed hitting those too heavily. Maybe I could have diluted my paint a bit more. You could absolutely edge highlight at this stage if you wanted. Up to you how you want to do things. That's looking great. Maybe we went a little bit too much towards lime green, but it's up to you how much you want to play with those ratios. And of course, where we used MOOT, you could use SKARSNIK if you want to pull things down a bit. This is pushing a little bit towards salamanders. Right, that's it. I think all I'm going to do now is give this a clean, and I'll give the model a quick panel lining. So what I'm going to do is probably put a little bit of Dark Angel's green contrast in with a black wash. Any black wash is fine. And I'm going to chase it down the edges here, and that'll really help things pop, especially around the rivets. That'll be magic. Take your time with this. It is absolutely optional. This looks fine currently, but areas like this in particular, these little squares, they're really going to jump out the moment we've done it. So I think it's worth doing. So if you wanted to see that panel lining process, got a wash here. Dark Angel's green has just kept it a little bit more in a greeny color spectrum. You could go for pure black if you wanted more contrast though. You could varnish before doing this. You could do an oil wash, whatever you prefer. So areas like that now, if you look at the two, it's a big difference, right? Could probably swap to not an ancient brush that has been noted down for scooping uses only. Could be making my life easier. And those rivets, always dilate it a little bit more for the rivets. It can be a bit more tricky. That's gonna look amazing done all over. All right, that was well worth doing. Those rivets are just doing so much to the paint job. What you've got to bear in mind is if you've got a fade here, and we've not gone for as subtle as we did on the Ultramarines one, and then like softly airbrushy, we've gone for a bit more contrast, a bit more speed. Any little constant details that pull the eye that go down are going to pull the eye away from your blend. So the blend will look softer if there's more stuff like this going on. Well worth doing it. I always take the time. I timed that. The rivets were like 3 minutes. So absolutely worth doing. What we're going to do as a final polish, with the rivets especially in mind, take some SKARSNIK, a smidge, tiny bit of the MOOT, because like I said, it is a little bit tropical. I'm going to highlight the top bits of lines, so anything that is literally like upward facing, and the rivets. We're going to drag with our brush at this angle. It's going to make it super difficult for the paint to leave unless it hits a detail. Secret tech everywhere in this video. And a quick single pass over those rivets is going to hit the top of all of them with what looks like a fairly fancy highlight, by army painting standards at least. Careful those smudges. Bit too wet there. So I'm using angle a lot here, really important. Nice, we're good. All right, so we're done. Turned out quite well. This looks really good. We've done a more subtle version. Don't know if people, you know, like which one of those do people prefer. From here though, which is a foot from the camera, which I like to think of as tabletop distance. Within 1 foot, that's, you know, you're scrutinizing things a little bit too much. 1 to 3 feet to 6 feet is what you, your opponent, and the rest of a room are going to see at a tournament, or your gaming buddy's going to see in a garage. I think both of these are wicked for that. Like, they are high quality for that. Little bit of chipping, little bit of weathering. This one, especially with some like warm brown mud on it, I think would look absolutely legit. Some freehand or some decals would obviously look amazing too. So yeah, that's it. Don't forget about the competition. Like scroll back, work out the timestamp where you think I went from Dark Angels to Salamanders. If you think I did a little bit, maybe a little bit too far pushed it. I should have used SKARSNIK instead of MOOT green a bit more, or covered slightly less, I think. Well, I'm not gonna give you any hints. You let me know where you think I transitioned between the two. Best suggestion for that is gonna win the competition. That's it. Like, comment, subscribe, let us know what you'd like to see next. Is there anything specific that we should be teaching people to do with the channel? And also, let us know what you think about the length of this one. Obviously, you've stuck around to now if you're still watching this, so thank you very much. We've left a fair bit in this. This covers everything involved for painting in this manner. Like, would you like us to cut it shorter? Would you rather we got this into 12 minutes? I waffled less, I didn't tell you specific stuff about the dampening pad, stuff like that. I just show you the colors and then, you know, like key aspects. Or do you prefer it like this? Any thoughts or feelings on that? Much appreciated. Me and Ian, the editor, are willing to play around with a lot of different things just to make it so the tutorials are the most useful for you guys. It's a collaborative project. I'll do all the suffering and the painting. I hope you're enjoying the upcoming army project. There's some really exciting stuff in that coming up in the near future. I'm gonna be touching on some old models that maybe you guys will recognize. So this is gonna be making a comeback. I'm excited for that. That is everything. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next video.